Hi guys, it's Mr. Y. Today we're going to be wrapping up our series on classification by learning about these things known as dichotomous keys and branching diagrams and how they are connected to each other. So we're actually going to be learning how to make both of these in relation to the other. So a dichotomous key is a guide of paired choices, and let me underline that. Paired choices to help identify an organism. Often it can be used to make a branching diagram, and often you can use a branching diagram to make a dichotomous key. So we're going to see how these two things connect. Now here's an example of a dichotomous key, and it's a small example. It's not very in-depth. It's actually only part of a full example. So for instance, in this example, we're going to try to identify a brown eight-legged insect. So we start with choice 1A or 1B. Well, 1A says has 8 legs or fewer. B says has more than 8 legs. Notice there's no in between. There's no option that says 8 legs. It's always A or it's B. So there's always two choices in this setup. So you'll notice because we have an 8-legged insect, we're going to choose choice 1A, and that says ... go to choice number 2. Whereas if we had taken choice 1B, it says go down to choice number 10, which you can't see on the screen. So we're going to go to choice 2, and now choice 2A and 2B says, well, does this thing have 8 legs exactly or 6 legs or fewer? Well, ours has 8 legs exactly, so we would go on to choice 3. If it had 6 legs or fewer, we would go on to choice 5, which again you can't see on this page. So we're going to go on to choice 3 because we have exactly 8 legs. And then it says, okay, does this thing have a brown body or does it have a gray body? And you'll notice for this one, that's enough characteristics to where we could actually identify our insect as a trapdoor spider. But if it was a gray body, the choice process would continue on a step further down. So this is the nature of a dichotomous key. Dichotomous means two. So every time you get two choices, 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B, 3A, 3B, and sometimes the choice sends you on to a further choice to narrow down the characteristics of that organism, and sometimes once you've had enough characteristics defined, you can actually identify the creature you're looking at. So, as I said before, this is the same exact slide, so you don't need to copy it twice. Again, notice every option has two choices only. There's no case of 1A, 1B, 1C. It's A or B. And that eventually, if you were to follow this path down far enough, all choices would eventually lead to identifying a single species. Not the same species, but you would get different species if you follow the pathway all the way through. That's the nature of a dichotomous key. So these are very important points to make sure you get copied down. These 2 points here. Here's another example of a dichotomous key. This is using Evergreen Trees based out of the Utah National Forest. You notice they say with 1A, 1B, okay, 1A, the leaves are scaly-like, cones are small, blue and berry-like. 1B, the leaves needle-like, cones are large and brown, and then they tell you go on to choice 2 or go on to choice 3. And then for choice 2, it continues on, and they tell you, okay, if the leaves are rough and berry-like cones are about 1 inch in diameter and the trunk is forked, you're looking at a Utah juniper. If the leaves are smooth and it's berry-like cone that's less than 1 inch, trunk has a central stem, in other words, it's not forked, that's a Rocky Mountain juniper. So we have it leading to species on option 2 already. If we had done 1B up here, we would go down to 3A and 3B, and then either 4 or 5, and then you'll notice eventually they all end either in things saying go on to another choice or it ends in a specific species. That is the nature of dichotomous keys. There's always two choices, and eventually all the choices would lead to a single species, to a single identified species, because you've identified enough characteristics of that species. That's what a dichotomous key does. So here's a dichotomous key that a middle schooler made up in terms of candy, and then they kind of were cute with the fact that they actually use scientific names to identify the candy, but you can see 1A, 1B, the candy is chewy or the candy is hard, and then it says, it should say go to option 2 or go to option 7 right here. But if the candy is chewy, you go on to option 2, either it's wrapped, But if it's not wrapped, it's this guy, Ursa gummius, which is gummy bears. If it's wrapped, you go into option 3, and then is it round or is it not round? Is the wrapper white or is it not white? But again, every time you either sent on to another choice, and notice in no cases are you ever sent to the same choice, you're always sent to different choices, or you've identified the specific thing you're looking at. Again, that's the nature of dichotomous keys. All right, so you should have a copy of this worksheet from me in class to help you with this, but if you don't, make sure you get this from me before you finish up this lecture, otherwise you're not going to have any clue how to do this next part. So this worksheet has several different weird looking little organisms on it, and you can see it's already got a branching diagram on it, and it says make a dichotomous key, and you have to figure out where each creature is placed. So there's circles right here for where the creatures are going to go. And as I said, this is called a branching diagram. Branching diagrams and dichotomous keys work together to help identify with organisms and to help with classification and showing evolutionary relationships. So let's take this first circle that I pointed to, for instance. We always start from a central branch, a central location. And again, that's inherent to evolution, where all organisms at some point share a common ancestry. It's just a matter of how far back in history you have to go. Whether it's a couple thousand years or a couple billion years, it doesn't matter. At some point, there's a common ancestor for all organisms. So you'll see right here, there's a branch. You can either go up or you can go down here. And if you go up, that means the creature has wheels. If you go down, it means the creature has no wheels. So we're going to go all the way to this very top one, like I said, back here. So we want a creature that has no wheels. And then you hit another branch, and again, you can go up or you can go down. Either you have wings or no wings. So we want a creature that has wheels and wings. And then again, you get another branch where you can go up or down. You have a creature that either has a tail or no tail. So our creature would have wheels, wings, and a tail. Well, which creature does that fit? What does that describe? From the pictures you can see here, that can only be one of them. That probably is creature H. Sorry, I don't make this nice and neat. And you would do the rest for the remainder of the figures. Again, every characteristic has to be added on. So for instance, if I was talking about this guy here, he better have no wheels, no teeth, 2 eyes, and a horn. So all the characteristics have to be there, and eventually each branch, like I said before with the dichotomous keys, would lead to a single species. And every time you branch, there's only 2 options. There's not a 3-way branch. So 2 options, and eventually each option leads to a single identified species. And as I said, that's the exact same thing we see in a dichotomous key. Every option has 2 choices. Eventually all choices lead to a single species. So take a moment, fill in your worksheet here for all the creatures. Fair warning about this guy here. He actually has 3 eyes if you look closely. Just look closely at your copy. Everything else should be fairly straightforward. So go ahead, take a minute and fill in the letters, and I'll see you on the next slide and we'll go through this a little bit better. All right, so let's see if your answers match up. We had H for the first one. Should be E here, J, D, B, G, A, F, I, and finally C. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take our diagram. You already have your labels on there, and we're going to number the choices. So remember, we started from all. What was always our first choice? Well, our first choice was either wheels or no wheels. So we're going to number those 1A and 1B because that was our first choice on the branching diagram. Now, I'm going to start with 1A and continue along this pathway up here. You could, in theory, start with 1B and continue along this pathway here, but I'm just going to make things simpler for you guys. So after 1A, what was our next choice? Well, you either had wings or you had no wings. So we're going to label those 2A and 2B. And you'll see 2B led to a species, so it ends there. 2A led to another choice. You either had a tail or you had no tail. So we're going to label that 3A, 3B. Now that we've had all these options lead to a unique species, none of them go to any more choices, we're going to come back down here and continue on with 1B. 1B leads you to another choice of either teeth or no teeth. So we're going to label that 4A, 4B. And again, I'm going to follow the 4A path this way, just so we go in a nice, easy order. 4A goes to either feet or no feet, and you'll see, again, you have a case where one goes to a specific organism and another goes on to another choice. So 5A goes on to another choice of antenna or no antenna. So we're going to label that 6A and 6B. And since both of these lead to a specific species, we're then going to come back down. We're going to deal with 4B now, which would lead to another choice, either 2 eyes or more than 2 eyes. So we're going to label that 7A and 7B. You'll notice how I'm not repeating numbers. I should not see 2 sets of 2A, 2B. Everything gets numbered independently. And again, we're going to continue with 7A. That goes to a choice, not species. We either have a horn or no horn. That would be 8A, 8B. And then because these lead to 2 specific species, we're going to come back down to 7B, which also leads to one last choice of lips or no lips, which we are going to label 9A and 9B. So now that we have all our choices labeled, we can use these labels to help us make a dichotomous key. And I'm going to show you the first 3 steps, but then you're going to have to finish the rest on your own. So on a separate piece of loose leaf paper, with this picture handy right nearby, you're going to start your dichotomous key for these creatures, and we're going to start, like I said, with 1A and 1B. Remember, 1A said has wheels. Put this in yellow. Has wheels. 1B was no wheels. If it had wheels, we went on to choice number 2. If it had no wheels, it went on to choice number 4. If you don't believe me, go back and look at your picture. 2A and 2B either had wings or has no wings. If it has wings, we went on to choice 3. If it had no wings, it was creature letter J. Then you have 3A and 3B. Both of these, it either had a tail or had no tail, ended up with creatures, and then you would continue on with 4A, 4B, down below. And that's how you make a dichotomous key to match up with the branching diagram. And you can use the branching diagram to make the dichotomous key, or if you do it properly, you can actually make the dichotomous key to make the branching diagram. And if we have time in class, I will actually show you a lab that involves doing that. So that's going to wrap up our lecture today on dichotomous keys and branching diagrams. Make sure you're clear on this stuff, and let me know if you have questions in class. Bye, guys.